realized early on that there were lots of video providers who were telling stories a lot like this, right? Like two guys behind a mic.
Yeah.
You don't need to. I mean, you're a good-looking guy, but you don't need to.
We don't need to look at our beautiful faces all of the time. Yeah.
No, this works as a radio show. Yeah. So he had that insight that. And we started thinking about it and realized that if there's someone sitting behind a desk, whether it's a comedy show or a news show, it often works as more often than not, it works as audio. And what we were aiming at wasn't like replacing radio. We were aiming at this time that people have when they can't look at screens, but they want to be entertained and informed. And from when you start thinking about it that way, it makes complete sense. And so I think my guess is that the two will merge more and more. The next version of the Echo is going to have a screen on it. Yeah. And I think that as cars become more likely to be self-driving cars, it just made sense for us as a company with an eye on the future to think about, how can this system work in both ways? And you can minimize the video. Yeah. And one of the things that we're exploring is whether or not we can just have a toggle to turn it off if you're in a place where you just don't want pictures flashing at you.
So, yeah, you've actually changed the way that I've been watching John Oliver on Last Week Tonight, because I'm listening to him, and then if it sounds like something I just need to see, I'll just skip back 15 seconds and then I can see it. Right. So, I'm sure, I don't know how HBO would feel about that, but it's an interesting dynamic being able to kind of move back and forth between those two things. But at the same time, the best speakers in my home are in my living room. Right. And you guys don't have yet an app on my PlayStation, my Xbox, my Apple TV.
No, you can AirPlay to Apple.
You can AirPlay. Okay.
Yeah. And the video will show up.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Well, all right. Well, then I stand corrected on that one. And then you have some Chromecast capability as well?
I think so.
Maybe.
So I am not the product guy. Before we started, I tried to Slack Steve McClendon, who's other Steve on Slack, to see if Chromecast is working. I
Sorry to put you on the spot like that. Okay.
But,
So do you see potential for an app for 60dB that is built for the television? I mean, Facebook and Twitter and they're trying to play with live video on the bigger screen. A lot of podcasts, apps, Spotify, they have TV screens, but it seems like no one's really figured out what they're doing there if they're not Netflix, if they're not your iTunes Store or Google Play or Amazon Prime Video.
Look, there's a big sort of category of television that is similar to what we do, like 7-minute stories, right? Yeah. And like there are a lot of YouTube creators with big followings like Phil DeFranco, whose work would fit really well in this context. And so I think between Chromecast, if it's working, I think it's working, and AirPlay on Apple TV, I feel like for now that's probably where we're going to be for a while, because it's really simple to just throw the service onto your screen and you'll get a mix of stuff. Yeah. So I think that a video-centric service around short form, there's a market for that, right? Like, clearly. And it's one of the interesting things about data. So we started early on testing a bunch of different content, and one of the standouts was late-night comedy monologues, right? Yeah. Like, if you just look at their engagement, even when there was no picture, they did really well. And so from those tests, we went out and pursued deals to get rights to do that.
Okay, makes sense. So one of the I don't know if it's a frustration or maybe a comfort zone for me, but as a journalist, a lot of the stuff that we're doing.
there are things that we've talked about internally. I think one of the sort of superpowers of digital technology, like one is personalization and the idea that you don't have to create a linear broadcast. I think another one is interactivity, right? Like in the ability to connect with your audiences. And you can do that for a business purpose by, instead of having like a horrible tote bag driven pledge drive, like just being straight with your audience and being like, hey, it takes money to do this. Like if you donate, you'll get fewer ads or no ads, right? Like that's a possibility. But